All right, Chad, thank you for coming on the Quality Values podcast. So, on this podcast, the core question is, what are your values in the context of your story? You've got quite the story. I looked through your stuff, and so I'm excited for this conversation. It's always fun to have these conversations with people who've got something different in their background.
Well, yeah, it's good, because the values got to match your character. And
Yeah,
sometimes in life, that's not always true, right? Sometimes we get sidetracked, and sometimes we explore a little bit. But I guess when we come back to it all, and everything aligns and everything becomes put together, I think everything can succeed from there.
yeah, awesome. So, tell me a little bit about what you do. You've
Yeah,
got your logo on here.
yeah,
You run Move. What are you
Yeah, so
guys
Move
doing
Human
currently?
Performance Center, physical therapy center in Chandler, Arizona. We work with people around the nation. We work with people around the world. We do physical therapy. We do sports training. We have recovery. We have cryo tank inside. But more importantly, what we do is we help people become the strongest person that they can be mentally. So everything is physical, but as you see with the logo, it's a handicap logo and an athlete in motion. And that was brought on by one of our former clients, Eddie King, that broke his back and had to overcome everything after a mountain bike accident and got back to walking again. And he was kind of the fire that lit me to open up Move and build the sanctuary that we have now today.
Awesome. And so what was your background with movement? What are your roots? What schools of thought have you studied?
Yeah, growing up, I was always an athlete. I played sports growing up, and I got hurt, and I got into physical therapy. I decided that was probably something that I wanted to do along the line. I always loved health. I love medicine. I was the first guy to take a look at the kids at the car wrecks that were on the side of the road or whatever, just because I liked health, and I liked all the medicine stuff. So, my mom was working for a therapist, and there was some inspiration there. So I went to ASU and was studying exercise science, kinesiology. I really didn't care too much about the program development, but it was more about the biomechanics. So it's almost like a human engineering. That's kind of my whole vision and perspective that I have. So, a lot of the strength trainers that are out there, a lot of the performance trainers, they have this big certain program that they do, with the weights and the routines, where mine's more about the human body and how do I keep you healthy physically and mentally, to keep you playing or to keep you even moving at your highest level.
Cool. Yeah, I'm a trainer as well. I don't know if
Okay.
you saw that, but yeah, I do the nervous system training podcast, in addition to this podcast.
Yeah. So,
That's all
so
about
next,
training the nerves.
National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I did all my studies,
Yeah.
all the stuff was through National Academy of Sports Medicine. So through the sports performance, the behavior change specialist, which that's kind of where I want to take the latest part of my next part of my career is all the behavioral change stuff. I've worked with so many people inside the walls. We help these kids. Generations have changed, from the athletes of the past. I've been doing this for 30 years, and so a lot of mine just through experience. I was very fortunate to get a job working with a physical therapy company, a great one out here in Arizona. And then again, 8 years ago, when we opened up Move, it just continue learning, and I tell everybody and I talk about it. Information is at your fingertips, man. You can learn every day if you use it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so just we'll dive more into your background since I know you got some juicy nuggets there. But just to stick on this movement,
Sure.
a question I ask trainers, one of my favorite questions for trainers is, what's your assessment protocol? I think that shares a lot about how you think of movement, what you're looking for, what you see as areas to improve with your clients.
Yeah, obviously we're all known. We have the Part Q, the original one. Everybody goes on the standard of the exercise
Hmm.
stuff, but that's like too generic, and that doesn't really explain what you want to do. And as you do this over time, and your vision becomes different. First thing I do is I attack them mentally and I challenge them mentally, not in a bad way, but in a good way. If it's an athlete that's coming in, I ask them about their goals, I ask them about their dreams, and I ask them about their vision. Where do they see themselves? I have a target system. I always use like a 50-meter target, a 100-meter target, 150, and a 200. And as you go through sports or you go through training, there's certain phases that you're going to have to get into. So, are you able mentally to endure the long challenge of staying on a program and getting you from point A to point Z? A lot of people here just exercise. They're not here to train. And so there's a difference between working out and training. So first of all, I just test them mentally, and it's just you can see the wants. I can see the desire. First thing I look for anybody is the desire. And then once I see that mentally, we go into the human body, and the human body. I'm a former BMX rider, skateboarder.
Cool.
I do all the extreme sports. I did play football. I did play wrestling, but that was just because there were sports to do in high school. But the passion is everything extreme sports, and that all goes back to balance, right? So, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing a lot of stuff on the Bosu balls. I was doing a lot of stuff on the Swiss balls. And a lot of these strength and conditioning coaches, they're like, Chad, man, all your shit belongs in the circus. You don't need to do this in the weight room. You don't see guys doing this. You got to deadlift 450 pounds. You got to lift heavy weights, pick something up heavy and put it down. And I really disagreed with that because I look at a lot of gymnasts, and I look at a lot of BMX riders, the Tour de France riders. It's a weight to power ratio is what it is. I don't think it's about really getting stronger. I think it's about getting stronger and more forceful at a weight that you have or that you are. So, getting you to maybe lose weight, get in better shape. I think that might be the big thing. So, as we take this body in there, my whole training philosophy, my whole training principle, and my evaluation, I start with the foot, right? And I'm probably one of the original guys. I know everybody does the foot nowadays, but again, I said I've done this since the 1990s. If you don't have power to your foot on the bike, your bike's not riding. If you do not push off your foot on a skateboard, you are not moving. And it's not the whole calf; it's the spring of the Achilles that works the foot. So I've always worked on the foot. When I test everybody and I put them in conjunction, everyone says that you got to do your core training. Right? Core training this and core training that, which is important. It really is. But I don't think that the trunk of the tree is the strongest part of the tree. I don't. It's the root system. And so the root system is your foot. And so when I put people on a balance board, or I put them on the shuttle balance system, we put them on the force plates. Now we have force plates. We do all the vault force plate testings, and you can see the center of pressure and you can see the movement that they have. So again, most people's ability not to balance, it's gone. They don't have that, and they have weak feet.
Do you know Marv Marinovich? Are you familiar
Yeah,
with
yeah,
his
yeah,
training
yeah.
system?
I know, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
his whole thing's out here. Yep, it's a whole thing. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
And
the whole podcast I do is on that. Like I don't know if you know my podcast partner on that one,
I,
Quentin Torres. He's got
no,
Quentin Torres. He's a Instagram guy, but yeah,
okay,
everything you're saying
but
is the same stuff we talk about on the
yeah,
other podcast. Start with the feet. That's your connection with the ground. That's
it is. What
yeah,
they teach us, it's a kinetic chain, right? Everything starts at the ground and comes
exactly.
out your hand. But then they
Yeah,
want to say you got bad hips or you got a bad core, and so they go right to the second floor. Well, they haven't addressed the ground level yet.
yeah,
And so it's hard for me to build a house or build a person if I have a bound foundation. It's going to fall over. So the structural
absolutely.
strength of it all comes into the foot. So just taking that and being outside the box. We have Mayo Hospital out here, and so my buddy's one of the head doctors that's at Mayo for the orthopedic. Dr. Chabra, he does ASU sports, and then Sai Tumula, who was there as a resident, he's now over at Stanford. They've invented, or Sai, part of his residency that he had at Mayo was they have now it's an app that you have on your phone. It's called VisVin, and you can download it on your phone. You can take a picture of your athlete doing a drop box, a box jump, a vertical jump. And then what it does is it puts these markers on the body instead of having to go to a human performance movement lab. It already addresses it through AI. It puts these markers on the body, and then it can show you valgus, vargus. It'll show you your collapse. It'll show you trunk rotation, flexion, extension. So it has all these things that are on there. When they brought it in first, and it's really cool. It's really cool. And I looked at the doctor and I looked at Sai and I says, I go, this is beautiful. You have all these markers on the knees and the hips and the elbows and the shoulders and the wrist. I said, but how come you don't have anything that shows the ankle collapsing when they land? You have no marker on the ankle. And he looked at it and he says, I said, I know you guys are measuring valgus and all that stuff here, but at the same time though, is that if the foot is off, when I have people stand up, everyone says they flat footed. You're not flat footed. Your hip creates the arch in your foot. So when you actually rotate your hip, your arch becomes more pronounced because now you can go ahead and supinate a little bit, right? Well, when I have that there, the hip creates arch. Your foot muscles maintain the arch of your feet. Right. So now once you're able to apply pressure and put a load onto it, so now you're able to maintain that. So, when they're looking at it, everyone says, well, the knee's off. I said, no, the foot's collapsed, And so again, that goes back into that root system. So that is my system that I always look at, And so when people get done with me, NBA guys, my NFL guys, whatever, they say, I had so much more balance when I got done training and move. But again, this goes back to Eddie King, my paralyzed guy. It's always stability before mobility. I had to get him to stand and be stationary. Right. And so I had to make sure that the tree was planted. Once the tree was planted, then we could get him moving again. So again, a lot of the stuff, it's just like my life system and overcoming the things I've done. It's through trial and error, But again, if you think simplistic, and then nowadays everything's quantitative, so we can verify it, and there's researches and tests that are out there and studies, and it goes back to your foot. It's the strongest part.
Yeah, I'm a martial artist, so that concept
This
of
is it.
rooted, that's
Yeah.
ingrained into that
Yep.
school of
Got a
thought.
bunch of Brazilian guys here. I got a guy that just going through the world championships and all that. And
Oh,
it
that's
is.
awesome.
It's your force is down. Yeah. I got a
Yeah,
wrestler girl right here. Yeah, I got a little wrestler girl now. We're just talking about that.
yeah,
Anchor. Yeah.
yeah.
But then
That's
also at the
awesome.
same time, you got to be light on your feet. So then, that's the other thing. Now, are you able to unload? So not just can you load the foot, but can you
Yeah,
also unload the foot?
Kelly Starlett's the supple leopard. It's all about that supple strength. It's
Yeah.
can you have strength when your muscles are soft? Not just when
Yeah.
they're tense.
Well,
Yeah,
effortless. We call it effortless power, right? Effortless
there we
power.
go.
So can you be able to produce power? But it's got to be. And again,
I love that.
you know, all of the velocity testing now that they're doing. So the percentage based training now they're all doing the velocity based training right now. So we have been using that system now for the last 5 years. Obviously the college and stuff because when somebody goes into the NFL or they go to the NBA, obviously they're getting tested with the latest and greatest of everything else. The kids go to college now. These high colleges they have great weight rooms. Everything's equipped with all the needs that they have for performance, but also for recruiting. We know that's a whole big aspect of it now too, because of the NIL and everything else. But we had the velocity based training, so we've put that in there. And it's interesting because when the kids come in and the kids go and they leave for colleges, we get validated by everything that we do, which makes us still is we're a private facility. We have a lot of people that come to us to gain a competitive advantage in sport or in life. But with the knowledge, and as you know, as a trainer, is that what are we trying to do this velocity based training? What is it all about? And then we take that to the performance side, and we also have to take that to the rehabilitative side of everything of coming back from injuries or from a catastrophic injury itself. You talk about energy. We talk about energy. So, you know, uh, force velocity. We're looking at power. That's all they're looking at. They're looking at the watt output. We're looking at speed. Is what we're looking at. But for what I tell people is, I look at the ability to have potential energy. Can you get all the way down? Can you store that energy? And then kinetically, can you release that in the upward fashion? I know we use that word concentric a lot, but really it's the kinetic aspect of everything that's going to be letting it come down. So when we put this into context and we teach our athletes, we teach our people about potential energy and kinetic energy to be able to produce movement, right? Because again, now you have power, and then power becomes able to forces and newtons, and they're doing all the measurements. So the biggest thing is to keep it simple: is can you store power and can you release power? Can you move it kinetically? And I find out that people have a hard time doing that because they don't stretch, right? We don't have people stretching. So now you can't shoot a rubber band if you don't stretch it because it's not going to go anywhere. So good. Now we're talking about elastic energy, right? And elastic energy is the tendons, the ligaments. Are we elastic enough to be able to produce that force at a high rate of speed? So potential energy, kinetic energy, then again, elastic energy. Those are the things. And it makes it simple for people to understand what we're trying to accomplish with them here. And I never use the word pounds, right? It's not about lifting all the heavy weights in the pounds.
Hmm.
It's about producing the most power.
Yeah, absolutely. It's force equals mass times acceleration. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
people focus on the mass a lot in traditional
Mm-hmm.
gym culture, but really the acceleration is as important, if not more important,
Yeah.
in
Well,
a lot
we
of it.
talk about the force. It's force of speed divided by time. So here's what we have
Yeah.
to is we have to get all this here. My swimmers, it's very easy because when I talk about swimming's easy. You got a distance and you have a time. If you swim the
Mhm.
fastest or you produce the most force for a long period of time and sustain that, now you're good. So then we get
Mhm.
on the air bike, right, or the air dyno or the assault bike. Once we tested their forces and I know that they can produce 1,300 watts or 1,400 watts, now I put them on the assault bike and let's see how long you can sustain that. So not can you just produce that, but obviously now you can see how long you can sustain that. So again, it's a whole performance based stuff. But again, it's not about just performance in sports. It's not about performance. It's about even recovery because after surgery, you have no power. They cut your power cord. You have to let
Mhm.
everything regenerate. The nerves have to rebuild in there. You have to get the muscles to fire again. You have to have everything activated. So even the same thing is that the reason why I can't lift my leg is because there's no energy that's stored inside it right now. So now we got to start doing some eccentrics, right, and get it strong the opposite way. So it's kind of cool, when you have the good team around you and be able to bounce everything off together. So it's kind of fun when you get to the higher levels of it all.
Yeah, man, that sounds really cool. I didn't expect to go this deep into the systems of it, but the last question
Well,
I'll
go
ask,
ahead.
and then we'll kind of
Sure, no,
want to
you're
get more
good.
into your values and stuff. But
Yeah,
with the foot training specifically, I'm a big
yeah,
advocate for it. My story is I had a foot surgery. I had prescription orthotics. They gave me,
yeah,
every year I'd
yeah.
get a higher arch, and then at some point I was like, this isn't working. I'm gonna try the exact opposite. So I did barefoot shoes. I slowly eased into it. changed
Yep.
everything. All my knee, hip issues started clearing up.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I've gotten into foot training since then. But what types of tools do you use? What's your approach with training the foot specifically with your
Yeah.
clients?
So training the foot, obviously, you have to make sure that it's all lined up. So I have a picture that I show everybody, and there's three really major key points on the foot. Your heel is always red, so that's for resting. Your big toe is yellow. Yellow is for balance, right? But your outside four toes is for force production, force absorption, power, and speed. So I have 3 points of contact on the foot. When I flip it upside down, it's a tripod, right? So if I have something
Mhm.
that's a tripod, it's stable. The reason why they put us in orthotics is because our tripod collapses. Now we stand on the inside, we're on a bipod. We can't balance on it. Uh, I broke my foot last year. I broke the navicular, and I have a Lisfranc fracture in it right
Yeah,
now, currently, whatever.
that was
And
the surgery I had, accessory navicular.
yeah, so I was playing basketball, came down. I was in the boot. I was supposed to be in the boot for 8 weeks. I made it for 2 weeks. I'm the worst patient, right? Uh, I,
Yes.
I bless everybody that comes through and does all the rehab with us. I understand what it's like mentally. But what I did is I was able to get into my shoe out of my boot because my foot was collapsing, and I know I have good arches. I have strong feet, but it was collapsing, and that was because that Liz Frank was broken inside it every time I walked on it. So what I did is I taped up my foot, right? So I taped up my arch from the bottom, and I was able to maintain those 3 points of contact. When I was able to do that, then I had to strengthen the foot, and obviously do everything else. A lot of it's the toes. I do a lot of toe training. If you go to the NFL right now, they're doing dynamo testings on your big toe. They're testing it for flexion and extension to see how strong your grand toe is. So again, that does now go back into the foot of what we used to do or what we do and how we do all this. Is that now everyone's starting to get the key is that they're tested all. The marble pickups and the towel slides everyone's done. Those are cool. Those are fine. But I do a lot more with TheraBand where you're overlapping your toes and you're working on extensions. You're working on flexions, extensions and flexions with it all. Doing an RDL and just putting a band under your toe under tension so you keep it locked in there. And then the biggest thing is just making sure when you're doing any squats or if you're doing lunges or any type of an activity that the foot has to be loaded properly.
Mhm.
And it lines up the calcaneus. And once the calcaneus is lined up, now you know that you're in a position to go up. Because again, it's the human body, it goes in multiple directions.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
the foot stuff. I think that's. I mean, you've seen the trend. I think that's really the
It
next
is. Yeah, it is.
era.
It is a trend, and I'm glad to see people doing it. And I wish. Yeah, I think on my Instagram stuff, I go back into like whatever 1999 or 2000 or something. And I've got another phone that I have that has all my old videos. But I've worked with so many, CSCS guys and NSCA guys, and everything's a barbell, everything is a hex, everything's a
Yeah.
deadlift, everything's a squat, everything's a clean. We don't even do cleans anymore because these kids, it's a hard movement for them to do. And plus, there's too many risks versus rewards at the young age for them all. So
Hmm.
if you teach them how to balance and build a good foundation, when I send them to college, now they have a better chance of getting that program. Every one of my college players, when they get there, I get something back from the college coaches, and they're like, "Man, I can't believe how well these people are trained." Again, my job is to make sure that if I pass them along to somebody else, which is just like life, if I pass you along, I got to make sure that you're behaving the best or you have the best values. And the value is that you care in your own health to be able to take it to the next level.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings me to the other side that I want to ask you about.
Yep,
We've mentioned the body, but you keep bringing up the approach, the mindset.
mine.
Um, and yeah. So
It's the
same question I asked you
biggest.
about the body. What's your background with the mindset? Where how have you developed your mindset, and then we'll get into what you preach and what you
you know,
teach.
as we go into what we preach, what we teach is, and I put myself in life. I've been through a lot of different situations. Like I said, fortunately, I was able to go to college and I had a perspective of what I wanted to do in life. And here I am doing it. Here I am
Hmm.
doing it. Along the line though, is that I had some ups and downs. I got hooked up into some drugs and I was slinging drugs. I was selling drugs. I never thought I'd be a user, but I was smoking crack on the streets. I was living the high life. I was around entertainment. I was around athletics. I was around girls. I was around money. I'm an entertainment guy. I'm fun. I'm high energy. I always have a good vibe. But I never thought I'd get sucked into that vortex. Sure enough, it led me to prison where I spent 30 months in a federal prison. Did my time in there. I got out the first day. I went right back to work training people again. Thanks to my good friends, they gave me an opportunity. I had a new future. I had a new vision. I had a new want and why in my life. I continued to stay with high values of what I told myself when I was incarcerated about what I would do to become the better person of giving back to the community, the society, and helping people from the ground up, right? So I had to develop my own system before I could help anybody else. And here we are. I got out of prison in 2008. It's 2025. 17 years later, I'm an owner of Move Human Performance Center, helping other people overcome adversity. And again, it's all through the mind. I've got 3 or 4 paralyzed people walking again. I've got people that have been on fire for 2.5 minutes and have sustained 67% of their body. I've worked with a lot of people that have been incarcerated and have not been back. So I work with them of trying to stay out. I think the recidivism rate is 62%. I've got a whole handful of us that have not been back. So through your values and your belief systems and really your self-identity, which is what I really preach a bunch on, is you can do anything you want to do in life, right? As long as you have a good foundation.
So you spent 30 months locked up. At what point did you know that you were ready to like hit the ground running once you got out?
24 months. I can tell everybody right now, 24. You got to serve 2 years in prison to be able to say I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
I've never once been the victim in my whole thing. Again,
Yeah.
when I was on the street smoking crack, man, I loved every moment of it all. Loved it so much I can't do it no more, right? I don't believe in addiction, and I know this is a touchy subject, but I don't believe in addiction because I've overcome a lot of things, and it's all by making a better choice, right? So I'm a choice kind of person. It's either yes or no. If you don't want a haircut, don't go to the barbershop. But if you go to the barbershop and hang out with your homies, you're probably going to have a haircut by the time you get done. So I try to put myself and I avoid myself in situations. Here I am in prison. From day one, I knew I was going to make the best of it. I got called to work, which is, I've always been a hard worker. When I was, I said it before, when I was dealing drugs, I was on call 24/7. I'd be the best guy because I could do it for you. Even when I'm trading, I work 7 to 7 right now. I work 6 days a week. People are answering the Instagram text message, email. I'm always available. Right, that's just me. So when I got in there, I was available. I started working. I got hooked up with a dear buddy. His name's Robbie, and he kind of grabbed me underneath his wing. He said, "Let's go. We got some stuff to do." So we went to school. Right, I got a associates in business marketing. We taught personal training classes that were inside there because again, when you come out, you have an opportunity to do something. You don't have to have a degree to be a trainer. Right? You just have to be
Hmm.
certified. So it's a great job, right? And again, I was already in it before I was a convicted felon, and I'm glad that it's a great thing because now here I am. I've applied for other corporate jobs since I got done. I got turned down because I was a felon. So you have to take it into your own hands. You have to take it into your own hands. So I opened up Move, helping out everybody here. 2 years of sitting in there, I said, man, I'm done with this. I just want to go home. I wanted to see, my wife. I wanted to see the kids. I wanted to be able to have my freedom back. I wanted to be able to sleep in the bed and shit by myself, right? I didn't want to have 5 other people shit next to you. So again, I knew at that point in time, this is what I was going to do. And again, that's when I painted my picture and I've stayed on it every day since.
It's a tough thing to pull off. I think was it 62% you said of
Yeah, I
people
think
end up back?
2%. Yep. Like
Yeah, so
60%.
I mean you're in the minority there, and I would say when you take into account the fact that you've are running a successful business, that's even smaller minority. What's been
And I just wrote my own book. Now it's even smaller. I
yeah,
think 1% of the
author.
people write their book. Right, 1% of the people write their book and actually publish it. So the 28th it'll be published. So again, I don't like statistics. I like to go against them.
Yeah. So what is that? Like what do you as you're facing a mountain, as you see, all right, there's going to be 10 million people going for the same thing I want, only 5 of us are going to get it. What makes you think I'm
Passion,
going to be one of them?
energy,
Yeah.
energy, and I don't quit. I don't quit. Right, but I'm also very methodical. Right, the days in the streets. And I got the tattoo on my arm right here. It says my every move is a calculated step. Right.
Hmm.
So my whole story too is on my body of my tattoos. I have a whole story. My whole upper body's tattooed. I got them all out of. I went in prison with no tattoos. I came out of prison and I got all these tattoos. My whole story is on my body. But it all started off with my every move is a calculated step. You got to think before you do. And I don't think people think. We just get into doing conscious things. I'm very optimistic. I am very, very optimistic. I don't get sucked into bad things. I don't have anxiety. I don't have depression, right? And again, that's just me though, and I was listening to some things and, we talk about resilience, and there's a lot of definitions now that are coming out of resilience. I've been able to endure times of frustration for a long time, for 30 months. There was times when I was in the streets, and living that lifestyle. It was about 6 years or about 4 years, So I'm resilient. I put myself in positions, but through outcomes and through what I've done of helping people, including myself, is that I know I can do it, and I know I can help other people do it. Not too many people can say what they've done, what I've done.
Yeah. And so on that note, what do you what little nuggets from your experiences, whether that's being incarcerated, whether that's working on the streets, like what little nuggets did you learn that maybe someone who went a more traditional route wouldn't have learned? What
Well,
nuggets do you still use today?
street smarts are always good, Street
Yeah.
smarts are always good, and you got to be simple. The biggest thing is that, being where I am now is that I'm able to communicate to different audiences, because you can't communicate to everybody the same. If I'm around a group of CEOs and I'm having a talk with them, again, my credentials are not there, but my character is. And so it's hard because a lot of CEOs talk about their credentials. When I go and I talk about my character of everything, so that's really what it's all about. It's about having a high character in whatever it is that we want to do. On the streets, hey, I promise you, I'm going to bring you your money and I'm going to make sure that I give you everything that you need. I always have myself a character. I can talk hood and I can be in there if I needed to and whatever. Now, again, I don't because I haven't been there no more. But like that's the code of conduct that you have to be. Prison, there's a lot of people that belong in prison. There's a lot of people that don't belong in prison. And there's a lot of people that go back because that's all they know. And you know who those guys are. But I didn't want to associate with them because I wasn't going to be institutionalized. Even I've got a buddy, my good friend, even to this day, he did 19 and a half years. Right? He's been out for 5 years. He's now like 10%, 11% owner in the company. He's the one that grabbed me when I first got in there, right? California guy. First day out of prison for 19 and a half years, they gave him an iPad. They told him to go to a WeWork station and it's time to start working. He went in with the flip phone Nokia. He had no idea what the hell he was doing, right? But he says when he went to the HR, they said, we're going to have to put you in the janitor. And he said, that's okay. I'm going to come out this bitch, the CEO, right? It's a mindset. And the mindset is that you cannot be defeated. Whatever you choose to do in life, whatever I choose to do in life, I make it happen. I'm not somebody that says I'm going to do something and say, well, why didn't you do it? Well, I didn't do it. That's not me. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. And again, it's having a plan. The biggest thing is having a plan. It's for success. You have to have plans.
And so, how do you teach this to your clients, to especially maybe youthful clients? How do you teach this? How do you demonstrate it? You mentioned that when they go to colleges, their coaches uh, talk back about their characters. So, how do you set that bar? And
I
what's
think
your key there?
the environment. It's environment and what we haven't moved and what I've created. All of our employees have been through something. It's kind of what we talk about. We look for a staff that's going to be resilient as well. You're going to have to come and grind. The work now, this world nowadays, you have to work. You have to work if you want to be successful. You have to work. We're going to give you your time off. We're going to give you vacations. We'll give you all that stuff, but then we're going to require you to be here. Just like an athlete has to be. A coach is going to require you to be there. If I'm doing some type of recovery program, you're going to have to show up every day. Recovery is not just something that you can show up today and not be here tomorrow. I promise you, it's not going to happen. I'm a one in a row guy. I use my methodology. I got it from a dear friend. His name's Art Dye. Biggest thing you hear everybody now, they call stacking days. Stacking days. Everybody's stacking days, right? You hear it. My whole life, since 1997, I think, when Mike Bibby was trained as a high school kid out here, my buddy Art Dye, he said, in order to be a nice basketball player and a good shooter, you have to start with one in a row. And then you make two in a row, and then three in a row. It's pretty simple. And then as soon as you make 10 in a row, now you become a good shooter. I use that with all my athletes in life, in training, and everything else. It all starts with one in a row. If you happen to slip up, and you fall down, hopefully the floor has been set higher that you don't fall all the way down because you've raised the floor. I'm not worried about raising the bar. I'm worried about raising the floor because I want our baseline to become better every time that we happen to go backwards. You're going to have ups and downs. This is life. But for me, again, sports is easy because I had to overcome the game of life, and that's more importantly than anything else. Sooner or later when you're done playing the sports, the only thing you have is your belief, your self-identity. I ask these kids to tell me something about who they are, and most of these kids can't tell me anything. They don't know, or they're embarrassed to say, or they're not confident to say, and they don't want to hurt nobody's feelings or hurt their own feelings. So when they ask people, that for me, that's your physical stuff. I'm a 51-year-old personal trainer, convicted felon. I smoked crack. I've got a bunch of DUIs. I spent 30 months in prison. That's really who I am. But my self-identity is I'm going to be very optimistic. I'm going to be there for you through thick and thin. My beliefs and my values are set to a high standard that I'm going to hold you to because if I can succeed, I want you to be able to succeed. And I know you can succeed because I've done it. So again, it's the whole system of believing, and knowing who you are.
Do you think everyone can kind of develop that? If say there's someone that comes into your practice and they're kind of lacking some of those character points, is that something that you're born with, or is that something you can learn?
No, there's something you can learn, you know. But again, what you have to learn is you have to learn what phase of that identity you're in, because your identity is never fixed; it's always fluid, you know. So my burn survivors, when they come in and they've got now, you know, scars to 62% of their body or whatever, you know, or Eddie, my paralyzed guy that went from a badass BMX rider, now mountain bike rider, now he's paralyzed. You know, when we talked with Eddie, the first thing we said is, or he said, is I got to learn to accept this new identity that I've been given. You know, you got to learn to accept the new life that you have. You know, being a professional athlete to being not. You know, to being not. How about getting your job cut now because of the transfer portal? You know, some people don't even make it. You know, so with that is that you have to be able to accept who you are, and when you do that, and you look at yourself, there's two types of people. They're the ones that you see moving around, and there's the one that you see in the mirror. You know, and the one in the mirror is the most important. You know, Michael Jackson told us that a long time ago. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true, you know. And every morning when I woke up in prison and I had to go shave and do everything else, there's only one thing you can do is you look in the mirror. It wasn't the most, the best mirror, but it was still a mirror that you had to look in. And like I said, after those 2 years, man, you knew it was time to change, and I knew I could help change others.
Yeah, that's cool. Um, Tell me a little about your book. When was it that you decided you wanted to write a book? That's a big undertaking.
Yeah, you know, when I got out of prison, I was working at Rehab Plus for the first 7 years. I was working with this lady. She had a shoulder surgery, 65, 70-year-old, just a sweetheart of a lady, right? And so as I'm sitting there working with her, she said, and we were just talking about things. Nobody knew about my past, right? When I got out of prison, I kept it quiet. I didn't want it to, because again, this is in the health industry, you know, the drug usage, the drug sales. Again, though, I played football. I just smoked crack and I'd go play football. Not the smartest thing to do, but I did it. You know, I was a spin instructor and I'd smoke crack and, you know, before I go do my spin classes, right? It was just part of that was me. That was me, you know. Again, got caught up into it. So as we're doing this, you know, I'm telling her some of these stories that were outside of that, you know. Um, she says, you got to write a book. And I thought about it. I'm like, you know, that'd be kind of cool to have a book. Everyone would like to write a book. I love writing, but I was not really in fine tune to it all, and I really have no idea about how to write a book. So she gave me this lady's number. My wife and I sat down and talked to her. By the time we left, this lady was crying. Right? And she said, "You guys both have just fantastic stories." You know, I was in the process of opening Move. There's a value. A book costs. It's not free. So as I'm getting to, you know, talk about how much this book would cost, she gave me the amount, and I'm like, whoa, there's no way I can do this. You know, I've got to open up Move. My finances are limited. I've got this amount on a loan. I would love to do it, but I can't. So here we are 7 years later. I had my 50th birthday last year. My wife contacted Laura from Peacock Proud Publishing. She says, I want to get Chad this book for his 50th birthday. I think the time is now, you know. Um, they set it all up. Came around, and my wife, she said, check this out. You know, here's what gift we're going to do. We're going to Hawaii for your 50th, but I also want to let you know that I talked to Laura. You're going to have a meeting with her starting at the beginning of 2024. You're going to have this meeting, and you guys are going to start writing this book, right? Man, I felt excited, but I had no idea what I was getting into. Right? I had no idea. It's a whole nother beast. So I sat down, and I do have a guy that was helping me write it too. His name is James. James Holy, just an awesome guy. So I had a team that was helping me do this. First question they asked me, they said, who do you want to write this book for? And I thought, man, I'm going to write it for athletes. I'm going to write it for therapy clients, people recovering from catastrophic injuries. I'm going to write it for convicts. I'm going to write it for CEOs. I'm going to write it for everybody. And they looked at me and they said, Chad, you're never going to sell the book. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they say in the book writing industry, if you write the book for the one person, you'll sell it to everybody. So I bought this book for the one person, right? And the one person was really me or anybody else that's reading the book. It's not about my story. It's about your story. It's a simple book of 10 codes of how to transform your life. They're outcome based because I've done it. It's very simple read, and it's going to hold you all accountable. Okay? When you go through this book and you read it, you're going to find out there's a lot of simple things that we could do to gain command of our life. If you ever feel like you're out of control, you probably are, because you can never be in control. The guards were in control of my life. The drugs might have been in control of my life. The streets might have been in control of my life. But it wasn't until I became in command of my life that I become who I am today. And so being in command of what you want to do, podcasting, training, whatever you choose to do, you can do that as long as you're in command. There's always going to be somebody working against you. So we put an outline together. We talked about all of the stories. In order to heal from the past, sometimes you got to live through it again, right? So we went back into the stories. I revisited being in prison. I revisited me and my wife, my current wife, not even being together when I was in prison. I revisited her dropping me off at the Marshall's building, and I said, I love you. Hopefully I see you in 30 months. And then we revisited my kids coming to see me and then leaving. So the emotions came around. But those emotions are played out in the book. It's good. So it's going to touch everybody because it's real, and that's what it is. It's real. So we spent 16 months writing it. It's coming out October 28th on Amazon. So I've got a hardback, a paperback, and an ebook. It's all coming out. Matter of fact, I got copies of them right here. So this is what it looks like. So it's 10 codes to transform your life, mind over virtual everything. And on the bottom, you'll see right here, I got the chessboard because my whole thing too, as I got out, is it's chess, not checkers, as we always hear. You got to know how to play the game, but you got to make sure that your every move is calculated. And that's what's on the back of mine right here. It's chess. Right? And so no matter what I have the chess and I got the checkers down below. Everything that I have, like I said, is tattooed as part of my story on my body. So I have a story on skin and I have a story on paper. So this one I can only bring to the people that come and see me, but to everybody else, I can bring the book and the read that it is.
You actually just touched on my next question there. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that your whole story is on your skin. I was wondering how much overlap there is between your skin and the book. Obviously, the book came out several years after you did the tattoos, so maybe
there's some. I use a couple of things in there, and I do use a lot of things, I guess I should say, in there. And it is part of, even when my publishing lady, she came down and she's like, I want to see the story, because it goes from chest and wraps all around, in the back. But my back piece, the biggest piece I have on my back is that sometimes one of my other codes that it's not in the book, but another value that I have is sometimes in life, we always say never burn a bridge, right? Don't ever burn a bridge because you never know when you have to cross that bridge. But through the places that I've been, there's been a lot of bridges that I burned because I don't want to go back to them. Not saying that I burned somebody, but there's a lot of bridges. The hardest thing in life to do is knowing which bridge you want to cross and which ones you want to burn, And so my back is a big burning bridge that's on the back of it all. And then on the bottom, I've got a beach sunset and everything else, So I give some metaphors that are in there, it all starts on my wrist with the game of life, right? So if you get this here. So you see here, this is the game of life. So they teach you to play the game of life, but the game of life isn't a game to play. Right? So if you do play something, make sure that you play chess. Don't play checkers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like Tupac said, my every move's a calculated step. You got to think before you do. Now on the other arm, I've got Monopoly. Right? Everybody now has had to be an influencer. They're working for the $500 bill. It ain't going to be there. If you work for the $500 bill, you just roll in the dice and spin in the wheel. If you do that, you're going to go to jail. But if you go to jail, just like the Monopoly houses, if you get knocked over, get back up, right? Start paying your taxes, make real money. If you ever were an inmate, it's because Monopoly told you to take the chance card. Why didn't Monopoly give you a choice card? Right? So if we teach people to take better choices instead of chances in life, maybe we have a better future generation. So those are the two arms that tie the rest of it together. So it's kind of a cool little piece, So either you got life or jail, whichever one. At the end of the day, you got two things: you got life or you got jail. You can spin the wheel or you can roll the dice. You got two choices.
Yeah, it's a good thing this is a video podcast, since that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
So tell me a little about these 10 codes. That it was codes, right?
10 codes. Yeah, 10 codes that are in there.
So what was the process of coming up with those or defining those 10 codes, and where'd they come from?
Yeah, the process of getting the codes, writing a book, you have a big outline, So I sat down and I was asked some just different aspects of my life, different values, different periods, different phases of it all, good, bad, how was your upbringing and everything else. And then we went through and we put them all in a category. It was called brain dumping. We put a lot of words together and a lot of funneling. So we took keywords out and we put these all together. And then we started to create a better structure for how we were going to write it. And then again, writing the book, you almost kind of write it from the back to the front, So the intro is always the latter part of it also. It's kind of like starting where I'm at now. If I could take where I'm at now and bring it all back to the very beginning, the book's going to be made. So we started doing the whole book. We had a plan, which that's chapter 10 is having a plan, and the codes about the plan. And then we went back into where you are now, and CEO to convict to CEO, and then we broke it all down. And so lesson one, in the first part of it all, is about self-identity. So chapter one's about self-identity, and when you become and you are in control of your self-identity, you're in control of your future. That's kind of the first codes that are out there. The second chapter is all about choices. It's called yes or no. And like we kind of hit on earlier, it's yes or no. Those are kind of two choices that you have. So the codes are kind of cool to have out there. They're good to put out there. I have some sound bites or some move bites at the very end of it too. So every chapter, I've got some key points that I also give everybody. And then in the back of the book, there's also a little worksheet that's in there for people to do. I would like to see people do the worksheet first, and then, so they do get the book, or if you everybody get the book, go back, find a worksheet, fill it out, and then read back through the book and see where you come. So that's kind of, it's not just because I wrote it. I can't be just because I wrote it, but there's some great stuff that's in there.
Yeah. I actually wrote a book myself this year.
Oh, did you?
It was a poetry book, and so it was a smaller project than it sounds like the one you put together. But I'll say it was my own sort of hero's journey, my
Sure.
own sort of path. That was kind of the content, and I found that since writing it, there's a sense of clarity. Like since I've taken the time to put my own story into like a narrative and to define it into sections, chapters. It's helped me like understand things to a point where when I'm having a conversation, I'm able to kind of like, I feel like it kind of gives me an edge where I'm like able to kind of, I've got
I'm
these
very all
structures
over
that
the
I'm
place.
hopping around. Yeah.
Yep. I'm very all over the place. So writing the book for me was great because it gave me 10 codes. And really each chapter, as we wrote the 10 codes, each chapter is a speech that I can give to somebody. So whether it be a CEO, a business that says, hey, Chad, I want you to come here and talk to my 1,000 employees. We want to talk about optimism, and so we're having some issues, we're having some issues with our morale and whatever. So each chapter that I wrote is a code that I can give on a speech. So that's kind of how we had it laid out. But for me, like just like what you said, it was great because as I went through and I did this with James and Laura was on the side doing it all, it helped me find structure. And with structure, like with anything we do in life, just like with my recovery and everything else, with structure becomes clarity. Right. And with clarity becomes success.
Yeah. It's just the same way you've got your assessment system, like that's how you see the important details. The same thing for understanding yourself.
It is, and it's, when I look at training and I look at people now, it's hard because, I look at somebody that's been through some stuff, in the NFL teams right now and all these college teams, they're looking for players, and yes, these coaches, like, what do you want your team to look like? And I need people that have been through stressful situations. I need people that have overcome something. I think that the skill levels of all these athletes that we create right now is just out the chart. It's out the roots. These kids are so specialized right now because they have a sports performance coach, they have a training coach, they have a yoga coach, they have a skills coach. They have all these coaches, and so the talent is there. But I don't think the thinking is, and I don't think the thinking is what they're working on. And so again, when I was doing the foot, everybody's doing the heavy weights, right? So again, right now, everybody's trying to do the skills and the training and the strength and all that. And I'm going back to doing more of the thinking. And I think that's going to be the next thing for me. I think that's going to be the next phase of my life. I always say the difference of stages and phases. Stages are things of the past and phases are things of the future. Right. So for the next phase of my life is I want to get out and I want to start helping people outside of my brick and mortar. I've got 4 walls I'm contained by, and I want to be able to get out stage. I want to be able to let people read my book. And so that's why I reach that out. And then again, be able to speak to more people and do more podcasts and just help out people. That's what we're in. It's healthcare, right? It's because I care about people's health.
Yeah. So growing your reach is, I always like to move towards the future with the end of these conversations, but growing your reach, growing your message kind of beyond your practice in Chandler. That's the next move for you.
We have 5,500 square feet right now. We've got 2 therapists. My wife and I, like I said, we started it from just her and I. We've got 8 employees that work for us right now. I've got 2 physical therapists that work for us. Now, again, part of my story also, which as we go to the future, I'm not a therapist, right? I'm a sports performance guy. I've got certifications, but I own a physical therapy clinic, right? So by doing that, I'm an outside the box kind of guy. I've wanted to do this forever. My mom had a friend that was a PTA. She went to Florida. She opened up her own therapy clinic. So I knew it was possible. I just had to have a physical therapist I was going to hire. So through our time when we got built and we started doing things, I was able to get a therapist on staff. We now take insurance, not just cash pay. So we're now a provider of physical therapy, which helped us because 3 years into opening up Move, remember COVID came around, right? And so we
Yeah.
stayed through COVID. We grounded. Most businesses don't make 3 years. I can talk about that statistic. We made it. 3 years was COVID for us. That could have just destroyed us. But again, with not panicking, no anxiety, no stress, we came up with a plan. My wife is a tough cookie too. She said they're going to have to yank us out of here if they want us to stop. So we stayed open when the world shut down. Colleges from around the country had athletes that had to get therapy, so they sent them into us. Year 2021 was our busiest year, right? The year right after COVID. So again, that's another thing of overcoming things. So I've been through these things. I've created a great team, and everything that I do, this is never about me. It's always about them. I wouldn't be here where I'm in today. I wouldn't have had my book if I didn't have a good team around me. To being able to be on these podcasts, I'm developing new team members with you and everyone I spoke with. So, I'm trying to create a better future for everybody. I'm trying to give them a career, not just a job, right? So we want to get a bigger place, 10,000 to 12,000 square feet. My buddies in Mayo, they said, whatever you do, don't sell it. You've got something great here. And I don't care if somebody comes from whoever in Exos wants to buy you out, do not sell it. Right? He said, you guys have a great thing. So we're the diamond in the rough, and I want to continue that way. If you want to take, people say you're not my client. I said, well, or you charge too much. I said, well, maybe you're just not my client. We charge $100 a session. It's not that much, right? Our training sessions are $60 a session, or you can get them for $40 a session. Right? We have you here for 75 minutes to 90 minutes. We don't have a time frame until the work gets done. I might have you in a counseling class and we're doing some type of mental counseling and you have a breakdown halfway through. I'm not going to say our meeting's done in an hour when I got to still help you try to get through this solution. So I take that approach with all of our training stuff here. When the time is done, the time is done. We don't have to beat the dead drum, but we got to make sure we put the work in. We got to make sure that you leave here better than before. So, people always say, well, your prices are too high. I said, well, no, you're just not my client. You're just not my client. I like to fix $25 haircuts, and we see those all day long in the training world. They've been trying to work and get your knees better and trying to do all this core stuff, but they forgot to work on your feet. So you're not going to get better. So again, there's a value for what we do, and I want to make sure that my team feels appreciated, from everybody. My youngest employee right now is my new grandson. He's 5 months old, right? Almost 5 months old. He just turned 4 months old. So he's with us here every day, So as a blessed grandfather, and everything else, I mean, hey, I can't, the future's already growing for me.
Yeah. Congrats on that. That's awesome.
Yeah. He's here with us every day. River, I told my wife and his mom, I said, he's going to be the quickest one to walk, because I did Eddie. I taught Eddie, to get walking again like a baby. Babies don't know how to walk. You got to teach them. They got the motor skills. You got to find them. So I was going to take old Eddie's and all my paralysis protocol. I'm going to give it to my little grandson. I'm going to get his butt walking here as soon as I can.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. He'll have the environment for it for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. And so what's this book launch looking like for you? What all is going into? You said the 28th, right?
So
today we're recording on October 9th.
Yeah,
so that's
So I'll
2
give
weeks.
you guys. I'll give you a little insight. I'll give you a little tip here. So doing these podcasts out. So I have, if you're an ebook reader, right? I have a pre-launch coming out the week of the 20th. So October 20th, it'll be out for ebook, for Kindle. I also do think paperback. If you buy it during the pre-launch week, you got to leave a review on Amazon so that I can hopefully hit this as an Amazon bestseller when it does get launched on the 28th. So the official launch date of it is the 28th. I've got a party down here for my launch team. I've got a team together of people that we're going to try to help them out. So for helping me get the word out, they've done some great praises and reviews of it already. And then November 1st, I'm having a big book signing party down here. People, I had a guy I talked to, he's in Idaho. He said, well, shit, maybe I'll just jump down here. We'll get up and we'll come down and we'll see you for the book signing party. Right. So, I got a book signing party for the community. Hopefully I've got everybody here, and then hopefully that kicks off the speaker engagements. And I got the tool to give everybody and leave them with a hope, a belief, and a sense of purpose.
Yeah. Are you excited? It sounds exciting.
It is exciting. My wife, some things happened today, and there were some things that happened about it all. And like yesterday, I got 50 books in the mail yesterday. I got 25 hardback and 25 paperback. You pick out the book, and I've got a picture of me sitting here reading it. And it's kind of cool to sit there and read your own book. But you know what? My story's not done yet. My story's not done yet. So, It's kind of like one of these things with the generals in war. Even they win the battle, they can't get too excited because they're going to have people coming and talking crap about it, or the media is going to be too all over. They're going to be too hyped up. And I still got to go to work tomorrow. So I am
Yeah.
excited. I am excited about it all because it's a new phase for me. But at the same time, I think I'm just more proud of myself. And very, very rarely, I don't think that people give themselves pats on their back. Myself, I do it quietly. There's just something you got to give yourself an attaboy every once in a while. But I'll continue to do it. My story's not written yet. I still got more to go, and I dedicated this book to my grandson. So I know I'm going to probably have another one here on the way, and so I got to have another book ready. So
Yeah.
first of many, first of many.
Cool. Well, it's a worthy pursuit. You've got a great story to share, so I'm glad you're
Uh,
getting it out there.
Jacob, I appreciate you having me on here sharing it. And that's what it's all about: is connecting with good people, and when we can connect dots. It's amazing the picture that we can draw.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, awesome, Chad. This has been really cool. Glad we
Yep.
got to connect here. Thanks for
Yep.
coming on. Tell people real quick how they can find you, how they can find your book starting on October 20th on ebook, October 28th on hardback.
If you want to follow some of the transformations of the peoples and the injuries and the athletes, follow us at moveperformance.com. It shows everything. My book website is mindovervirtualeverything.com. Instagram, hashtags, Twitters. We have all the social media stuff, Move Performance, and also then Chad Dunn 22.
Awesome. And all those links will be included in the description everywhere this podcast is posted. But yeah, this was really cool. I
Yep. Oh,
appreciate the
thank you. Yeah.
conversation, Chad.
Well, it's good because there's a similarity with the health and the training, and it does go into the mind. And again, when everything's rooted in the tree, I want all of my people to be when the world comes around and there's a big storm. I want all my people to be the last tree standing. And if there's a series of trees standing, you all know that they came from Move, and they were all led by me.
Awesome. On that note,
Yep.
thank you much, Chad.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you.